Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yasora Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasora Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachani Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Namiya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jai Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasoda Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivraj Jai Astotara Sattva Savai Charanaraminda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Shri Gauranitai Ki Shri Shri Radha Govardhana Dari Ki Shri Shri Krishna Balaram Shri Giriraj Govardhana Ki Gaura Premanande. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Jai Jai Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Jai Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Jai Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Reading from Sri Caitanya Caritamrita, Adilila, chapter 16, text 20 and 21. E mata bangi prabhu kare nana lila eta navadvipe lakshmi virahe dukhi haila. E mata bangi prabhu kare nana lila eta navadvipe lakshmi virahe dukhi haila. Vaishnavis, somebody want to try? Karinana Lila Tanavadvipe Lakshmi Virahe Dukahila. Mata, in this way, Mange, in East Bengal, Prabhu, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Kare, does, Nana, various, Leela, pastimes, Etha, here, Navadvipe, in Navadvip, Lakshmi, the wife of Nimai Pandit, Virahe, in separation, Dukhi, unhappy, Haila, became. Translation: because the Lord was engaged in various ways in preaching work in East Bengal, his wife, Lakshmi Devi, was very unhappy at home and in separation from her husband. Please repeat. Because the Lord was engaged in various ways in preaching work in East Bengal, his wife Lakshmi Devi was very unhappy at home in separation from her husband. No purport, so we'll read text 21. Prabhura viraha sarpa lakshmi damshila vira. I can just do it. Viraha, it's not on the board, no. Viraha shapa vishetanra paraloka hoila. Translation: the snake of separation bit Lakshmi Devi and its poison caused her death. Thus she passed to the next world. She went back home, back to Godhead. Report by Srila Prabhupada, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 8.6, Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam twajat yanti kalevaram. One's practice in thinking throughout his entire life determines the quality of his thoughts at death. And thus at death one obtains a suitable body. According to this principle, Lakshmi Devi, the goddess of fortune from Vaikuntha, who was absorbed in thought of the Lord in separation from him, certainly went back home, back to Vaikuntha Loka after death. Amagana timirandasya gananjana shalakshaya chakshu unmaditam jena tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. So, we'd like to invoke a little further auspiciousness before attempting to speak on this important early pastime of Lord Caitanya by just reading a very important and famous verse in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, which Srila Prabhupada does quote on many, many occasions, and some of you may know this verse. I'm going to attempt to read the Sanskrit, everyone, because it's very beautiful, and then we'll read the translation. It's described. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings can be summarized as follows. Arajo Bhagavan Vrajesa Tanayas Tadama Vrindavan Ramyat Kachit Upashana Vraja Badhu Vagena Va Kalpita Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanam Amalam Premam Pumarta Mohan Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Madamidam Tarantara Na Paraha. Translation: the object of worship, Aradhya, is the Lord in his form as the son of the king of Braja. His abode is Vrindavan, and the cowherd girls who live there with him, chief amongst whom is Radhika, are his perfect worshippers, or Samradikas. The most enchanting method of worshipping the Supreme Lord is that devised by these gopis. The most authoritative source of divine revelation is the Srimad Bhagavatam. Love for Krishna, or prema, is the fifth and ultimate goal of life, human life. These are the basic principles of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's belief, and we thus consider this doctrine to be supreme. So it's thought the author of this beautiful verse is Srinath Chakravarti. And he was a contemporary of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's thought, there are different opinions, but Srivas Thakur also had a brother by the name of Srinath. So some attribute this beautiful verse to him, and of course in this verse you may have picked up some famous and oft-quoted words in our Gaudiya Vaishnavism, such as Prema Pumartu Mahan, very famous, the fifth goal of life. Everyone in Vedic civilization, spiritual circles, understands there are generally accepted four goals of life: Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha, which translate to pious activities, religiosity, Dharma, Artha, economic development, karma, sense enjoyment, and finally moksha, or liberation. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has revealed that there's a fifth goal of life, and that is what is famously known as prema. Prema Pumarto Mahan. Mahan means great. That's the great fifth or somewhat secretive goal of life, and that is to develop ecstatic love for Krishna. And also it's mentioned there, Srimad Bhagavatam Amalam Puranam, that the spotless Purana, Amalam means spotless, Purana is Srimad Bhagavatam. So they're just a couple of the important verses, and sometimes we like to quote a little extra to invoke auspiciousness before attempting to speak. Mangala Charanam, also in Vedic spiritual circles, one doesn't write a book, for example, or attempt to speak without first trying to invoke auspiciousness, Mangalam. And especially in the writing of books, on transcendental subject matters, we see the author will always try to invoke the blessings of his or her beloved Ishta Devas, worshipable deities, spiritual masters, the Vaishnavas, and they always pray that whatever they write will bring happiness and pleasure to their readers. So came across that wonderful verse whilst doing a little research, very famous verse in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. So here we have an important event in the life of Nimai Pandit, young Lord Caitanya, where as a newly married householder Brahmin, Lord Caitanya went to East Bengal to earn wealth, and as was done by Brahmin youths and men in those days, they earned their wealth by teaching. And because Nimai Pandit was the Supreme Lord, enjoying a pastime as a great scholar, whilst in East Bengal, he attracted many followers, many students who returned with the Lord to Navadvip. But sadly, whilst away, the Lord's first wife, Lakshmi Priya, or Lucky Priya, if you speak Bengali pronunciation, passed away due to intense separation from her husband. It is said that one can die of a broken heart, so Lakshmi Devi passed away. She returned being a goddess of fortune to the spiritual world. Similar incident occurred with Dasarath Maharaj, the father of Lord Ramachandra. We all know the famous pastime is there in Ramayana when not only Ramachandra but three other sons were born to Dasarath, and but when Lord Ram, along with Lakshman, another son, younger brother of Lord Ramachandra, and Sita Devi were banished to the forest, not soon, for a period of 13 or 14 years. That separation was just impossible for the father to bear, and not long after that, Dasarath passed away as well. So, and of course a little further on we will read how Lord Caitanya, in fact, on the order of his mother, or the request of his mother, he married again Vishnupriya Devi. And Buddhimanta Khan, who was a very wealthy associate and devotee of Lord Caitanya, he bore the expense of the entire wedding, second wedding of Lord Caitanya. And he said, I do not want this to be another poor Brahmin's wedding. Because Brahmins traditionally are poor. They either voluntarily or by force of circumstance often live in a poverty-stricken condition. That is actually a curse by Lakshmi Devi herself, because we know that on the Supreme Lord's chest eternally is the footprint of, anyone can tell me, who kicked Lord Narayan in the chest? Loudly? Not Devasa, no. Bhrigu Muni, thank you. Yes, Bhrigu Muni. He was designated to go and find out which of the three principal deities, three lords, Brahma, Shiva, or Lord Vishnu, was actually transcendental, completely beyond the modes of material nature, even goodness, passion, and ignorance. So Bhrigu Muni, the story is there, of testing the three lords, so to speak. And ultimately, both his father, Lord Brahma, and his brother, Lord Shiva, did become angry in certain ways. But Lord Vishnu tolerated the kicking of Bhrigu Muni on his chest, and that imprint is still there, along with the curl of golden or white hair, Srivatsa, and the Kaustuba Mani, this priceless gem that only Lord Vishnu wears. There is the footprint of Bhrigu Muni. So, yes, so Brahmins traditionally live, though some Brahmins become very opulent. Advaita Acharya was extremely wealthy in Navadvip due to the generosity of a king, a local king. I think it was his grandfather who had been an advisor to the local king and given very good advice to the king, and the king rewarded Advaita Acharya's grandfather with land and houses and a great deal of opulence. So sometimes Brahmins are also very prosperous. But anyway, in this instance, the Lord's first consort returned to the spiritual world. So as usual, I have too many points, 3 pages of points. I don't know where to start, and it may be a little bit not connected. We'll try and connect as we go through, but there is so much nectar in this Krishna consciousness. So where to start? Hare Krishna. Okay, current affairs. Let's start with current affairs. Some of you may have heard or not heard. There are big events coming up in the Krishna consciousness movement. Very fortunate and very hard-working Nrsimha Kavacha Prabhu is about to depart on a long sojourn to the island of Mauritius, where in just a week or so's time, beautiful large marble deities of the Panchatattva are going to be installed in Mauritius. Prabhupada visited Mauritius. He said Mauritius, being a predominantly Hindu country, had a very good chance to become one of the first Vaishnav countries. And so steadily over a long period of time, the past 50 or more years now, Krishna consciousness has developed very nicely on the island of Mauritius. Many devotees there. So dear Kavacha ji is heading off, I think on Monday, to assist in that wonderful installation, Panchatattva, in Mauritius. Very wonderful. We always delight, even we may not be able to physically go there, at least we enjoy hearing about these major events in the forward progress of the Sankirtan movement. Some of you may have also read that next year, on February the 29th, 2024, is the 150th anniversary of the appearance of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Very important occasion, and ISKCON has, in recent months, approached UNESCO, United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. And they have agreed, every couple of years UNESCO looks forward to what major events in history are coming up, especially to honour great personalities who have had a significant effect on, in a very positive way, on the world. So they have, on ISKCON's suggestion, agreed to honour in certain ways next year the 150th anniversary of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, who, of course, for some of us, he is our grandfather, spiritual master, for others, great-grandfather or great-great-grandfather, spiritual master. So that's a very significant event coming up in just a few months' time, because UNESCO did recognise that he was a very powerful teacher, spiritual mentor, who had a very profound effect not only on India's history but the whole world, sending disciples to Europe in the 1930s. And of course we know, fortunately for us, instructing Srila Prabhupada to also come to the Western world and to share Caitanya Mahaprabhu's sublime teachings with English-speaking people. So that's coming up next year as well. And I was thinking in that regard also, his father, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, once predicted that the Krishna consciousness movement will be successful when High Court judges are wearing tilak. So Thakur Bhaktivinoda himself was a High Court judge or district magistrate, the equivalent in our Australian society as a judge of the High Court. So Thakur Bhaktivinoda was a fearless preacher of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings, and he himself would shave his head once a month, and he would wear 6 strands of big tulsi beads around his neck when he went to the court. He was very happy to demonstrate practically his Gaudiya Vaishnavism. So, so here we go into all sorts of wonderful aspects of Krishna consciousness. Not in any particular sequence, everyone. I'm sorry to say. Someone else may prepare their classes in a definite, systematic way, but we'll try to do our best here. Of course, there is an interesting, in regard to Lakshmi Devi's disappearance, pastime. And we'll read a little bit more tomorrow, how Mahaprabhu, consoled his mother, because we do know that Sachi Devi and Jagannath Mishra lost a number of daughters prior to the appearance of their 2 sons, Vishvarup and Vishvambara Mishra. And Lord Chaitanya's older brother never married. He left home in his teenage years and took sannyas. So when Sachimata was able to have a daughter-in-law, she was very happy, extremely happy. And then suddenly her daughter-in-law passed away. So for that reason she requested her remaining son at home, Nimai, you please marry again. Actually, interestingly, Bhaktivinoda Thakur also lost his first wife. And Thakur Bhaktivinoda was only a man of around 20 years of age, and they had already, his wife, she had already borne him a daughter. So Thakur Bhaktivinoda in the mid-1800s was there as a solo dad with a young child. So he decided to remarry quite soon after the passing of his first wife. And some of his family members criticized him for doing that he should have mourned the passing away of his first wife for a longer period. But he felt, the Thakur, the urgency and the necessity to marry again, and he did. And his second wife, Bhagavati Devi, was a staunch and very exalted Vaishnavi in her own right. And of course, together, the couple bore many other children, including the great Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati and other sons and daughters, perhaps 10 or 12 in number. Because at that time in India, and everywhere else probably in the world, infant mortality was something which was very common. So for that reason, people had quite a few children. Because some of those children would not survive. So something in connection there as well. And similarly, there is a pastime of the Lord Buddha, Gautama Siddhartha, known as Lord Buddha, Keshavadrita Buddha Sarya, Jaya Jagadish Hare. Jayadev Goswami has identified 10 avatars, 10 prominent incarnations of Krishna, one of whom being Lord Buddha. And there's an interesting pastime. Lord Buddha, when he was doing his traveling and teaching, did that prominently in the northern part of India, states like modern-day Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. Along the bank of the Ganges, predominantly, he would travel. And often people would recognize him, perhaps not necessarily as an avatar of the Lord, but at least as a great sadhu, a great spiritual teacher. And in one village Lord Buddha was residing, a young mother lost her son young son passed away suddenly. So she was naturally very aggrieved. So some of her family and friends suggested, there is a great sadhu, perhaps you go and talk to him, he may be able to console you. So this young mother went and asked Lord Buddha, can you bring my son back? And he said, oh yes, I can do that. But first of all, you have to go to every household in the village and ask them, have they not also had some calamity like this? So the young lady went, and every household in the village she asked, everyone said, oh yes, I just lost my father last week. Oh yes, I lost my husband, I lost my wife, I also lost a child. So she got the realization, yes, that it wasn't just her. Everyone, such is the nature of this world. Brahma, Bhuvana, Loka, Puna, Avatano, Arjuna. From the highest planet, Brahma Loka, to the lowest, Patala Loka, all are places of misery, Krishna certifies, wherein repeated birth and death take place. So, such is the nature of this place. We have come, we're all just passing through. And what we do in one lifetime, as Prabhupada wonderfully mentioned here in another famous verse, the Yam Yam Vapi Smaram Bhavam verse, one's practice of thinking throughout his entire life determines the quality Prabhupada uses of his thoughts at death. Of course, we do have exceptions to that rule. Ajamil is a famous one who called his youngest son Narayan. And Ajamil was a very degraded fellow. Even though born in a respectable family, he became a very degraded criminal and committed many atrocities. But at the end of his life, he did, not out of any devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he did have the good fortune to name, as was common in ancient times, people would give their children names of the different personalities of Godhead or their consorts or great devotees. So Ajamil chanted Lord Narayan's name at the time of death. And the Vishnu Dutas came, the servants of Lord Narayan came, along with the Yamadutas, the servants of Yamaraj, who take very sinful persons to Yama Loka for judgment. So there was a big standoff, you could say, between the Vishnu Dutas and the Yamadutas. Ultimately, the Vishnu Dutas prevailed, even though the Yamadutas protested. We thought our Lord Yamaraj was the supreme. You're saying there is another? Oh yes, there is another, much more powerful. Your Yamaraj is the servant of our Lord Narayan. But the good quality, the one good quality that Ajamil had, along with Jagai and Madai, was that Ajamil, Jagai and Madai, they never committed any Vaishnava aparad. They never offended Vaishnavas. That was their saving grace, you could say. Jagai and Madai, whose original names were Jagannath and Madhava, and in Bengali slang nicknames, they became Jagai and Madai. But they also never offended any Vaishnavas. The Vaishnavas stayed out of their way because they were obnoxious characters. So they also didn't offend any Vaishnavas. So, but they did offend Lord Nityananda, and Lord Caitanya was about to severely chastise them. But Nityananda Prabhu intervened on their behalf and begged mercy for them. So those examples are there. Okay, here's where we go off script a little bit, everybody. Bear with us. Interesting. Srila Prabhupada was asked one time by a scholar, is there an example ever of a disciple thinking he knows more than his guru? And Prabhupada chuckled and said, only if he's a fool, a damn fool. Because the example is there of, again, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and his Diksha Guru, initiating spiritual master, Srila Gaur Das Babaji. One was a great scholar, vastly learned. In his youth, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was not only a great astronomer and astrologer, but he was also a great mathematician. But he accepted Srila Gaur Das Babaji Maharaj as his initiating spiritual master, who was illiterate. But he was a Paramahamsa, Uttama Adhikari, Nityasiddha, Vaishnava, both were. But Gaur Das Babaji, even though not highly educated, was a realized soul, an incarnation of renunciation, and a great devotee of Radha and Krishna and Sri Sri Gaur Nitai. So that's an interesting contrast, you could say, enigmatic contrast between a vastly learned, somebody who was known, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, as walking encyclopedia, and Nrsinga Guru, fearless. But wherever he travelled, and we heard this the other day from Devagowda Hari Prabhu in his nice class, wherever Srila Gaur Das Babaji travelled, he carried with him two of the famous books of Srila Narottam Das Thakur. And if he couldn't read them himself, he would get whatever devotees were attracted to him to read them to him. And he was also vastly learned in Vaishnava philosophy because he'd been a practicing Vaishnava his whole life. And he used to go and listen to the lectures of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur there in Navadvip at Thakur Bhaktivinoda's house. Such a beautiful name. Some of our Bengali devotees. So hard to remember everything in old age, but Hare Krishna. Swanada Sukhara Kunj. There we go. The home of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Navadvip, just across the Jalangi River. Our devotees who have visited Mayapur no doubt have visited that house, being very nicely maintained in recent decades, renovated and maintained. Such an important home. So let's see where we can go from here, everyone. Hare Krishna. Oh, this is interesting also, yes. We may be wondering sometimes how Caitanya Mahaprabhu's particular mood of worshipping Radha Krishna came into Navadvip originally. It came in via Advaita Acharya and Pundarik Vijayanidhi, who were great disciples of Madhavendra Puri, who is described as like the root of the Caitanya tree. Yes, Mahaprabhu is like the trunk, and the trunk of a tree has many branches. So after Mahaprabhu's appearance, then he made many, many followers, and they became large, medium, or small branches of his tree. But prior to that, a couple of generations before, the great Madhavendra Puri appeared. And those personalities like Pundarik Vijayanidhi and Advaita Acharya especially were his initiated disciples. And they were living in that area. And of course, Ishwara Puri. And Ishwara Puri was a disciple of Madhavendra Puri, and because of serving Madhavendra Puri so nicely at the time of death, his guru was passing away, taking care of him very, very nicely. He got the blessing of Madhavendra Puri to get none other than the Supreme Lord, God himself, Lord Caitanya, as a disciple. So he became the initiating guru of Lord Caitanya. Ramachandra Puri, infamous, was a very offensive person, heavily tinged by Mayavad philosophy. was banished by Madhavendra Puri at the end of his life. He is actually the incarnation of Jatila in Caitanya Leela, according to Kavi Kanapur, Gora Ganadeshtapik. Jatila, the mother-in-law of Srimati Radharani, who was always very jealous of Sri Krishna and suspicious of her daughter-in-laws meeting up, having her suspicions. So that is who Ramachandra Puri came back as. And perhaps another nice, interesting, one Hindi poet has written that God, Krishna, is very perverse in his estimation, this Hindi poet, because, and his rationale for judging that is that in nature we see the peacock has absolutely stunning, gorgeous plumage, which he likes to fan out to impress the peahens. But peacocks don't have a particularly nice call. We can attempt to do an imitation. Meow, meow, meow. I hope that is approved by some of you who have just returned from Vrindavan. Not a particularly attractive call, but the cuckoo, also known in Hindi as the kokila bird in Vrindavan, has a beautiful call, very sweet, melodic call. But the kokila bird or cuckoo is black and not particularly attractive and very shy. So this Hindi poet has adjudicated that God, Krishna, you're very perverse. You create these phenomena in nature. Of course, here in Australia we have similar, and I'm going to call on Ram Prasad to confirm this, that we have our eastern whipbirds, Ram, yes? And there's always two, is that right? One calling and the other responding. Yeah, I thought that was a little Aussie bush bird guitar there, everyone. So we've got to 20 past. We normally try to, I've got more, but we normally try to finish and give a little time for questions, answers, or corrections. Perhaps one last one, okay? This I came across also. The eyelid protects the eye. Humility protects against offences. And humility comes from Vaishnav Seva, serving Vaishnavas. From serving Vaishnavas, or regularly serving Vaishnavas, one develops humility. And humility protects us against offences, which we don't want to do. So I'll stop there. I don't know if we have Bhakta Mike around this morning. We had electricity outage. I can't see a Bhakta Mike if somebody wants, just in case there is. Otherwise, we can just wind up early. But does anyone have a question, a comment? Ram Prasad Prabhu?
When you mentioned that Jagai and Madai were famous, or not famous, but were not benedicted even, but were known to have not offended Vaishnavas, that sort of surprised me somewhat. Like, we know that Lord Caitanya was going to use his Sudarshan Chakra on them for offending Lord Nityananda.
Yeah, well, that was the incident. That was kind of like the spark, the catalyst for a massive change. But up until that time, that's mentioned in, I think, Bhakti Ratnakar and other Gaudiya Vaishnava. Up until that time, they hadn't offended any Vaishnava. The Vaishnavas stayed out of their way. That's how it's described. So they hadn't, but they certainly, when they did attack Lord Nityananda, and I think we told the story last time we spoke, that invoked Lord Chaitanya's wrath, and he did come there with Sudarshan Chakra invoked. And of course Nityananda Prabhu, and those famous paintings are there of Lord Chaitanya with eyes red with anger, Sudarshan chakra invoked, but Nityananda Prabhu in between the two and begging the Lord, don't kill them, because if you kill them, you basically have to kill everybody in Kali Yuga, because everyone's almost as degraded as Jagai and Madai. Yeah. And Lord Chaitanya, out of deference to his dear Nityananda Prabhu's request, he forgave them, but ordered them to stop their nefarious activities and to become Krishna's devotees, which they did. Anything else? Anyone? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.